Good morning, Lee. Today is October 29th, 2014, and I am pleased to be talking to Dr. Lee Burcham from the Kiwanis Club of Carlisle, and today we will be discussing the history of the now famous blueberry sales that have started within the county, not only our Kiwanis Club, but other Kiwanis clubs, and how it all began, since you are a founding father of that project. So, do we have your permission, Dr. Burcham, to talk about this issue today?
Indeed.
All right, terrific. So, would you please give us a little bit of the beginnings of this project, how it all started?
All right. I had rejoined the Kiwanis Club about a year before this began, and all of the discussions in the club were about the financial failure club. We had no assets, no monetary assets coming in for the multi charitable purposes that we intended to spend the money on. And I thought it over for a while, because in my neighborhood I had been going over to New Jersey each year to get blueberries.
Just for the folks in your neighborhood?
Yeah, for the folks in my neighborhood. And I'd come back with maybe 300 pounds, 400 pounds, something like that, whatever my station wagon would hold. And I was doing that because earlier we had been buying berries from a lady up in Newville. And for about 3 years we bought from her. She came around in her pickup truck, and she had blueberries from New Jersey.
And what year, pray tell, was this?
This was about 89, 90, 91, yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps into 92, 93. Anyway, the blueberries stopped. She didn't deliver one year. I called her and she said, "Well, my father-in-law and we couldn't make the trip this year, and so we've stopped doing it. But here's the name of the dealer we've been working with in New Jersey, and he'll be glad to give you some berries." That's when I started going over there, perhaps in 93 or 94. And each year I'd get 300, 400 pounds, bring it back in the station wagon, give it to my neighbors. And then, so when I rejoined the Kiwanis Club, I told them, they heard all these dour forecasts of financial instability and dire consequences about to befall us. I said to Debbie Ryerson, who was our president, "How about selling some blueberries?" And I got the 40-foot stare in the 10-foot room, like, what are you talking about?
Right.
And I said, well, I told her what I'd been doing for the last almost a decade, and that I thought these were a saleable item. And if we handle it right, we can sell a lot of blueberries, make some money.
So Debbie was the president in 2002.
She in 2002 into 2003.
Okay.
Her presidency ran out in October of 2003.
Right.
So we had a caucus, and we decided, well, we'll give it a shot in the spring. And we made preparations with the grower.
And was this Mr. Whelan?
Pardon me?
Was this Jeff Whelan, the grower in New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is
because that's who we use today.
Yeah,
pretty
he's one of the growers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I found out that when you deal with one grower, you're dealing with a whole bunch of growers over there, because they have co-ops and working arrangements. Anyhow, Fred Dietrich ran this particular True Blue co-op at a little town there. I would slip my mind now. Anyway, up around north of Hamilton, New Jersey, about 30 miles. And so at the appropriate time, when the berries were about to be ripe, he called me and said, "We'll be ready for you. When do you want to come?" And so we put together a traveling venture, and Cliff Yinger and I drove over in my little Hyundai station wagon. Don Geistweit drove an Econoliner, which he had rented. We went over to to the Blueberry Co-op and picked up 3,000 pounds.
Which would be how many boxes?
That'd be 300 boxes.
Of 10 pounds?
These are 10-pound boxes, yes.
Okay, 300 boxes.
And I brought back 40 in my little Hyundai station wagon, and Don Geisweit brought over 260 boxes. So we got back, and when we left the co-op, it started raining. And as we approached Carlisle, it rained harder and harder and harder and harder. And by the time we got to here, it was an absolute torrent. And fortunately, we could back up into the offloading area of Project Share.
Oh, you were at Project Share then
Yeah,
as well? Okay.
yeah. Project Share had volunteered their space for us.
And so this was in 2002?
No, this is in 2003.
3, okay.
I'm sorry.
3, okay.
Yeah, 2003. And in July, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so we offloaded our berries, and we said, now what do we do? Because we hadn't done any advertising. We hadn't gotten any purchases in advance.
Well, it was word of mouth through the club, though, wasn't it?
That's it, through the club. We're going to
Okay.
have blueberries for sale. Get ready to sell some.
And what was the price?
And the price then, as I recall, was $19 a box.
Okay.
And we paid $11 for them.
So you had
$11 a box.
$8 in profit.
So about $8 a box profit there. Well, it took us about 2 days to sell those berries, but we finally sold them to grocery stores and restaurants, and people who took them on said, hey, I know where to get rid of these. It'd take 5 boxes or 10 boxes. But we got rid of the 3,000 boxes, and we made a profit. I don't have the figures handy here. Made a profit of about $2,500. Well, that's more than they had gotten from anything in half a decade.
I bet, yeah.
And the only thing that was contributing to them then was the rose sale.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the start of it. And we said, well, now we know how to do this, and we know that we have to advertise in advance, and we have to do some preparations in advance that we didn't do. We had no retail experts in the club at the time. No one volunteered. So we then made our plans for the following year, and we said, well, let's go for 4,500 pounds, because I think we can expand on what we did. Well, we got orders for 6,000 pounds.
Ahead of time?
Yes.
And how did you get those ahead of time orders?
Well, we put an ad in the paper finally,
Oh, okay.
and we did some flyers, posting them up here, there, and every place, out at Carlisle Barracks and places. And people responded, and we got we had
Advanced
our second
sales.
sale was 6,000 pounds.
Okay,
Well, from there it took off,
yeah.
and through the years, then I think if I can be approximate here, our first year was 3,000 pounds, our second year was 6,000 pounds, the third year was 9,450, the fourth year was 12,000, fifth year was 16,000 pounds. Then it went to, I think, 19,000, then it went to 21,000, and it was 26,000 in 2010, as I recall. And then a new team took it over, and they experimented around it, and they pushed it up about 1,000 pounds a year. And we're at about 30,000, 30,500 now. So that was sort of the history of it. But in the process of doing this, we said, this is a very, very profitable thing. It was putting like $20,000 into our coffers each year. So we said, we'll let some of the other Kiwanis clubs in central Pennsylvania in on this.
So they didn't come to you, you went to them?
Well, it was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Sometimes they heard that we were selling blueberries, and they called us. Other times we went to them and said, would you like to get in on this?
Because of the truck, right? Because of the tractor trailer truck, you could put a whole bunch of blueberries in there. He could make one
yeah,
delivery.
Yeah. We'd have a single truck delivery to 3 or 4 destinations. Yeah, I follow you. And so we began with, I think our first club was probably one of the York clubs, Chambersburg, I'm sorry, Chambersburg. And then Shippensburg came in, Dillsburg, Gettysburg, Hanover,
What about Newville?
And then Newville came on very late.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Newville just has only been in about its third year now, fourth year.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And it's a smaller
Club.
amount of berries they take.
Yeah.
But then churches in the area began to hear about this. And
Goodness.
as far away as Bedford.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And so my phone rang consistently over about a 3-year period there. Well, people wanted to get in on the act of selling blueberries. And this was fine with me because people in Bedford aren't going to be our customers and I could worry less about them. So I prepped all these people, sent them emails and told, this is what you need.
You sent them to blueberry school.
Yeah, send them to blueberry school.
Okay.
So you need a hand truck to move these things around because when they come, they're heavy. You need a refrigerated space because you're going to have these for 24 to 36 hours. And if they melt down, they're no good.
Yeah.
So you got to keep them firm. We had churches in Harrisburg, churches in Bedford. State College then got in on it. And State College became a very successful and very quickly because they're a bigger place than Carlisle and Hanover and York and Chambersburg. And so they're up around 40,000 pounds now.
Wow. Okay.
And some of the churches gave me back emails and said, well, we didn't have the kind of experience you did, but we had a very successful one, and we made $3,000. Well, that was big dollars to those folk. So the idea of the blueberry sale spread, and we changed growers a couple of times there because of some problems that came up, but we ultimately came back to the same growers because it's one team. People who go over there and think that they can have confidence in talking to this grower about that grower, within 7 minutes, the other grower knows all the things you've been saying.
Mm-hmm. It's
So
a
when you go to-
close-knit community.
So when you get to talking to him, he knows who you are, what color your eyes are,
Yeah.
the whole bit. So that's sort of the nutshell of how we grew and how we did expand. And those associations are still hanging on today.
Mm-hmm. All the people that, in other words, contacted you over the years are still doing the blueberry sales?
Oh, yes. I don't know of
Okay.
anyone who's dropped out.
For heaven's sakes.
Even the churches that were involved, I've had contacts with 2 or 3 of them, and the churches are still doing it. They have a limited ability to expand, but they're still getting that $3,000 or $4,000 a year of profit
Income,
coming
yeah.
into their treasury. So I'd say it was a rousing success. It was just a product that was sitting there waiting to be sold. And I don't have any complaints about the blueberries. We've had 2 or 3, one instant, Glenn Klein was with us. He had a customer he had sold some berries to, and the customer called him back and said, my berries were all rotten. And Glenn said, well, gee, let me come over and take a look at them. And he said, well, where'd you have these berries sitting? And how long have they been out there? He said, well, just 2 or 3 days. Well, where'd you have them? Out in the garage. Oh,
Yeah.
well, in 3 days and 95 degrees, the berries are nothing. They're just
right.
slush.
Yeah.
So they were rotten by that time.
What type of blueberries did the club buy? The brand, the name.
Okay, Blue Crop is the main one,
Okay.
and the Duke is the second one. Now, the only difference really is that the Duke comes on about 10 days earlier. And if you get the late Dukes in that 10-day period, they're about the same identical blueberry as the early Blue Crops are.
And we use the blues.
And we use the Blue Crops, and we get some Dukes,
Okay.
depending on whether our sale is like the 10th of July or whether it's the 5th of July.
Right. Well, we always try to avoid the 4th of July weekend.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So it's sometime after that.
We did have one sale, I think, as late as the 11th of July, 10th or 11th of July, but most of them have been the 5th, 6th, 7th of July, and we get the Blue Crops in.
And these are picked then how many days before they're loaded up or boxed up and then taken in the truck and delivered to us?
Yeah. Normally, these berries are picked the night before.
The night before?
Yeah, oh yeah. And they pick right up until about 2 o'clock in the morning. And when the last box then is filled at 2 o'clock in the morning, and by the way, one of these growers had 105 little Mexican pickers, immigrant pickers. and they turned out and they go to work. And they bring in these 40-pound lugs of berries every 20 or 30 minutes.
Oh my.
And dump them out and they get sorted out, washed. So the procedures for handling the berries is very tight-knit in terms of time. They start, realistically, they probably start picking about 5 o'clock in the evening. They pick around to 2 o'clock in the morning. And they're all loaded on the truck, on a refrigerated truck. And they get here about 5:30 to 6 in the morning.
Okay.
And there you are. They haven't been picked 24 hours when we get them.
Goodness.
There isn't a grocery store in the area that can match that. Not even Giant.
Well, yeah, I would
Anything you
wager.
get from Giant is probably 3 or 4 days
Yes.
old at the earliest.
Yeah.
So,
And they come in 10-pound boxes.
yeah, that's anathema really to the blueberry people over there. They don't deal in 10-pound boxes except about 3 of the growers will do it.
Is there a problem from their end with that, or?
Yeah, there's a problem with it because all their machinery is set up to do pint boxes.
Well, the little things you pay like $4 for in the
Yeah,
store.
and they run these boxes through with the speed of light.
Ah.
And it's all mechanical, and they're filled, covered with plastic, and put in boxes
Yep.
automatically. Nobody touches them. And with a 10-pound box, they're manually filled, they're weighed, and they're set off to the side and put in there and said these are 10 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of appropriation of labor and how much time you want to spend filling 10-pound boxes.
Yeah.
Now we've had very compassionate growers, for the most part, and
Do all the other people that copied this idea from the Carlisle Kiwanis Club, do they also use the 10-pound
yes,
boxes?
they all take 10-pound boxes.
Well, then this is something then that they have, the growers then have probably managed to do more economically because of the quantity of sales?
I don't know.
Oh,
And when we say that we take in the aggregate here, a truckload is 80,000 pounds, more or less. That's just like a
drop in the bucket?
drop in a bucket to what they harvested that day.
Mm-hmm.
They probably harvested 20 of those trucks full. At the one grower we've been dealing with, he has 1 million plants in the ground that are bearing at any one time.
And how much can one bush make?
About 40 pints.
40 pints?
Yeah, a good mature bush will yield you about 40 pints.
Okay.
That's a lot of blueberries. And when you put 1 million of them yielding 40 pints, that's a whole lot of blueberries. We went there and looked at the blueberry farm, in particular the growing area. And you stand here, and as far as you can see in all directions were blueberry plants, 5 feet high, spaced about 5-foot centers, I'd say, or 6-foot centers. And you can count them, but there's 1 million plants, 1,100,000 plants out there, really.
Yeah.
And that's just one grower.
And you say there are co-ops.
Oh yeah, they're
So
co-ops.
like 5 or 10 altogether?
Oh, or 20 or 30 or 40.
Okay.
And a lot of the growers, when they have their crop picked, that's in it. They don't know anything about it from then on. It went to a broker.
Oh,
And the broker handles
yes. The
And
sale.
it went to a wholesaler,
Yep.
and they got their money.
And they get their check.
And that's how and they aren't even interested in talking to you about, I want 30,000 pounds. They say, no, we haven't time for that.
Yeah, yeah. And is this all they do then? Just grow blueberries? And
Yeah.
it's one crop a year?
Well, some of them, and in fact, the one we're dealing with now is going into cranberries too.
Oh,
But Ocean Spray bought every berry that he's going to grow for the next 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, for he doesn't have any spares. 'Cause all of his berries go to Ocean Spray. He signed a 10-year contract.
Wow. Wow.
So the blueberries and cranberries are compatible. Although the cranberry needs a lot more water.
Yeah, they're in bogs or something, aren't
Yeah,
they?
but you can build those bogs fairly cheaply
Mm-hmm.
and contain the water to keep the berries happy. The blueberries aren't inundated all the time, but And, one question always comes up, have these been sprayed? The answer is yes, they've been sprayed. But before the blossoms were on the ground, or on the plants.
Oh.
They're sprayed before the blossoms come, because once the blossoms come on, if you have a spray on there to kill insects, you'll kill all the bees who are pollinating your
Native
plants.
flowers, right.
And characteristically, what happens is that the people who are in this business bring in their 80,000-pound truck, big 16-wheeler. It's full of beehives.
Oh, they bring the bees too.
Beehives in, and they set the beehives out in this 1 million plant
Field.
patch,
Yeah.
and leave them there for like a week or 10 days, whatever it is, and they pollinate their plants for them. And they pick up the bees, and they always move slightly to the north as the season. They start down in Georgia and North Carolina, and they gradually move northward.
Okay.
And they get up into Jersey and Pennsylvania simultaneously. And then they move on up into Maine and southern Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And finally they get up into the far reaches of Canada, still southern Canada in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And then they collect their bees and they head south again.
Wow, it's such a interesting story how it all goes full circle,
Yeah,
actually.
it is, really.
And then we all have these blueberries in our freezers and get them out every morning and put them in our yogurt or make the whatever with them.
They freeze very, very well. Probably nothing freezes better than them. I said the cherry. The sweet cherry will freeze very well, but the blueberry freezes. And I ran across a box the other day, a package rather, 1.5 pound package that had a date on it of 11.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 14. That's 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell the difference in the berries.
Yeah.
Now, there's a time when it comes, maybe it's 7 years or something like that, that berry will begin to deteriorate.
Mm-hmm.
But even under freezing conditions, but they keep very well.
Yeah. And then the Carlisle community, how well have they responded to this Kiwanis project over the years?
They've been quite responsive. Again, they account for our growth in the customer list. We maintained customer lists in our early years, 150 people, something like that. We're now up to around 1,200 people on the list, and there may be others that we don't even have the names of who drop by to get berries, because the attitude is now that if we have berries, we'll sell them to whoever walks in the door, and worry about not having enough when we get to that point. So far, they've been lucky.
But on the other hand, too, there are people who say they will buy the berries and then they don't, because we don't get the money up front, right?
That's true.
They come and they're supposed to pick up and pay.
That's right.
And then they don't come and pick up, so we have boxes left over.
That's right. Normally, that runs about 5%. About 5% of our people don't show up to pick up the berries. Mm-hmm. And it varies up to 10%. We've had as much as 10% didn't come.
Right.
Now, out of 1,200 people, it means 120 people didn't show up. And the average is like almost two boxes per customer. That's 240 boxes. You've got a quarter of a ton there that you have left over.
Yeah, and almost 2 pallets.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's something you have to keep your hand on and control in terms of customers not showing up. We've thought about taking money up front. 2 or 3 of the clubs do. Mm-hmm. And the churches out in western Pennsylvania take prepaid.
Good.
They can't afford to have any losses.
Mm-hmm.
And so many times when we've gotten on the list at the very final moment of the sale, I started calling people who haven't shown up. I said, "Oh God, I forgot all about that. I'll be down there. How long? When do you close? Yak, 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 yak." And so here they come along about 2:00, 2:30, and they're getting their berries. They forgot all about them. And then, believe it or not, I get calls 2 or 3 days later saying, "Do you still have any berries? I forgot to come." Mm-hmm. Yes, we've got about 10 boxes. If you'll come down to Project Share, I'll give them to you. Well, when will you be there? Right now. And they come.
And tell us about the relationship with Kiwanis Club and Project Share over the years.
Sure. Well, the Kiwanis Club has sponsored Project Share in terms of some dollars they give each year.
Oh, so they're part of our charitable giving?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Good.
We have given funds to Project Share for their purposes. And Project Share, of course, is in the food pantry business. It dispenses a lot of foodstuffs to the people in the Cumberland County area. So we have a good relationship there. 2 or 3 of the people have volunteered, like Jim Boyton, I know, had volunteered at when the people come in to pick up their groceries periodically. And don't know how often that happens. I think it's 4 or 5 times a month. And people come in to get foodstuffs from Project Share. And Jim, I know, and some of the others have been there to help dispense those items. So it's been a good relationship. And we try to be in there as of 5 o'clock one morning and gone no later than about noon the next day, and clean up the area and turn it back over to Project Share as was, without messing up anything.
And then we have 2 days of deliveries, so to speak. The first day is the Kiwanis people, in fact, sell the berries to folks and then deliver them. Is that not true?
That's true. Yeah, the way we're set up is that you have a total list of customers. Some of those customers have been developed by the Kiwanians themselves. And for instance, Fred Drews used to have 55, 60 customers. He'd take those boxes to them and deliver them to them, which he can't do anymore. But on the other hand, we have people then who have called in and said, I need some blueberries. How many boxes do you want? You want 3? You're down for 3 boxes. You pick up the 3 boxes on the second day.
Mm-hmm.
The first day, we dispense to the Kiwanians for their own sales. And they get that over between 6 in the morning and about 1 o'clock.
And how much of the total sales does that usually encompass?
It's been running about 50-50.
Half of them, okay.
Yeah, now this last year, I think the last 2 years, it was running more like 40 to 45 by Kiwanians and 50 to 55 to 60 to the public.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that means the Kiwanians are getting older and they can't deliver them or what. It could be something simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
They can't, and so some of those people are now picking up berries themselves, which used to be delivered to them.
Right.
It isn't necessarily a shift in who's buying the berries. It's the same people, but they're buying them in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
This last year, I think they failed to deliver any berries to Carlisle Barracks, and that cost them about 50 boxes.
Mm-hmm.
But that's their decision-making process.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know the Kiwanis Club gives back to the community. Children are our mission, and so with the money that we make from the blueberry sales goes back to the Carlisle community.
Yeah, there's a number of programs like the one that Barry
and George
administers, and one Carol Lawrence has with Warm the Children.
Warm the Children, right.
And there's a couple of more that are one of the programs that's missing probably that should be there, and that is to ferret out those children in Cumberland County who are undernourished, underclothed, underhoused, and need help.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't identified those yet.
Yeah.
And there's probably 500 to 1,000 of them in the county. Yeah. Needs help.
Well, through the years, you're saying starting in 2003 then?
Yes.
And continuing to this day, the blueberry sales with the Carlisle Kiwanis Club looks to be a moneymaker.
It's a moneymaker, and it's of course it's a surpriser because there was a lot of resistance to it the first year or two. And then they all decided to get on the bandwagon. It looks like it's going to go.
About how many volunteers does it take from the club to make this happen?
About 20.
20? Mm-hmm.
It takes about 20 people. Getting the orders taken ties up about 5 people, whether those orders are taken by telephone or by the dedicated telephone, which is an automated line, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We have, they can call in 243-6800, I think it is,
Mm-hmm.
and give us their order. And that phone line is cleaned out each year, each day
Mm-hmm.
of the sale. Then we get a lot of personal phone calls. And it was interesting to me this year, which I wasn't even on the committee, and yet I logged 42 telephone calls at my home.
Yep.
For berries.
Well, they know you're Mr. Blueberry in
Yeah,
Carlisle, and that's
sure.
why.
That's true.
Lee, come on.
Well, they knew that I had something to do with it for a while.
Well, is there anything else you think that is noteworthy that you would like to mention in this video recording?
Well, I just say that in the aggregate now, since our efforts have expanded out through south central Pennsylvania, just to reiterate, we do have the clubs of Hanover and York, and we have Gettysburg and Dillsburg on that side of the river. We have the two Chambersburg clubs, Shippensburg, Newville, and Carlisle. I don't believe I've left anybody out there. I can't think of another one right now. But anyway, those clubs are all making quite a bit of money. And it's more money than they've seen consistently each year in a long time. Even the rose sales, which haven't done that well recently for some reason, never generated those kinds of dollars. And we're still trying to keep about a $10 a box profit.
Profit margin.
The cost was $11, I think, to start with, and now then it's about $23 a box. So we're still making about $9 to $10 a box.
Last year, I think the sales were $31 a
31.
box. Yeah.
I think they paid 21 this last year.
Mm-hmm. And some of the other clubs were selling them for 30.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So each club can sell them for whatever they want to. I got out of that business very early. I said, all I'm going to do is tell you about how you can do it, and then you do it, and you do it with your numbers.
Right.
I don't want to be a coordinator on this or anything like that, because you get in deep kimchi very quickly.
All right. Anything else? Any final closing remarks, Dr. Burcham?
No, I think I'm fine with that. I think that'll spread the word.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for your time this morning.
You
we
bet.
certainly do appreciate it.
Is the coffee ready?